I have an addiction to Severance. This last week, given that it was February break, I went on a trip with my dad for a couple of days, meaning that I missed the releases of both Invincible and Severance, which I would have watched instantly had I been home. And I cannot express to you how difficult it was to not spoil these episodes to myself. I had to keep holding back on looking at anything at all related to the new episodes, and as soon as I got back home, I grabbed a snack, laid down, and watched Invincible first because I wanted to go to sleep thinking about Severance. That's how you know something's special to you, when you specifically avoid it so that it feels all the better to finally get to it. And I have to say, this new episode, Attila, did quite a bit to accelerate the wackiness of this series. Some of the moments of episode 6 had me thinking, what is even going on, more than I have in a long time. To talk about those specifics, I'll have to disclose a spoiler warning, which just happened right now. Let's begin. For the innies, we actually have a bit of a rest period, as it seems that MDR is taking some time to rekindle their friendships before setting out on their missions. Dylan does not do a whole lot in this episode, however his final moment could be incredibly consequential for him going forward. As many had suspected, it seems that Audi Dylan's wife, Gretchen, is more infatuated with his innie that we know so well than Dylan George himself. The Audi family visitation suite may have not been intended for this purpose, but this could certainly result in some issues for the team, and more likely some issues at the George household once the Audi finds out. Around the same time, Helly and Mark have sex once again, this time with Helly actually being herself. Mark explains to her what Helena ropes him into, and after some time to herself, Helly decides that the only way to reclaim her body is to have her own memory with Mark. This itself is a tragic moment, as well, for a multitude of reasons. First of all, Helly might love Mark S., but certainly not as much as he loves her, and she isn't engaging him in this way for the right reasons. Helly is simply attempting to get back at Helena in a way that heavily leads Mark on in the scenario in which she's not actually interested in him. Additionally, this is something innies are not supposed to do, and therefore they have to hide, something which they will certainly slip up on at some point. Severance clearly is attempting to once again go for the forbidden love angle, something which they succeeded in the first time around, and are now duplicating. As well as this sets up another potential rivalry between Innie and Audi for Dylan. Personally, I find the most impressive thing about Dylan this season to be his versatility, juggling many storylines simultaneously, which I would of course attest to the writers this season, particularly Aaron Wagoner this time around. His bond with Irving, his distrust of Mark, and his blossoming relationship with Gretchen all do not feel like they are overflowing. As I said, he doesn't even do much in this episode, and he's still versatile. Separately, we have a couple subplots for characters who keep getting themselves deeper and deeper in shit. Milchick specifically would be one of these people, who continues his attempt to assert dominance by forcing himself to grow, and essentially threatening Miss Huang, who clearly has become his own little Milchick, with him being Cobell. In Season 1, Cobell was the rogue, more outwardly evil superior, while Milchick secretly held all the cards, and it very much feels like the roles have been reversed. Right now may very well be a small win for him, as he seems to have reminded Huang of her position, but I think it's unlikely that MDR will respond well to him tightening the leash, and his bosses are not going to respond well to him becoming more than just a pawn. The further Milchick falls, the more human he becomes, and the more Trammell Tillman gets to flex his acting chops. The more Tillman, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Irving is also showing himself to be a threat to Lumen, since his dinner with Bert and his husband Fields, played by John Noble with the funniest delivery of "Innie" yet, predictably does not go well. Bert and Irving bond, but Fields is left third-wheeling and revealing secrets he shouldn't, like that Bert has been working with Lumen longer than Severance has existed. This setup seems to position Bert as a Lumen lackey that is not just any volunteer, and the chance to see Christopher Walken play Psycho once again is almost exciting enough to make me want it. But god, man, I do not want Bert to turn out to be a villain, turning this Irving-Bert romance on its head once again. There is another moment with Drummond, the new Grainer, that implies that Audi Irving is on Lumen's radar, and I would not be surprised if his storyline is about to go to some dark places. There's even a theory spreading that Irving will be decapitated, given some convenient angles positioning lines over his neck, which seems dark for the show, but presents hints that are difficult to ignore. Plus, the fanbase has been strangely accurate so far, so poor Irving may not be long for this world. Even though I think removing Totoro once again would be a travesty, I have to commend Severance writers for giving Irv so much to do, even setting up his Audi as a possible spy collecting information. It's almost too much to summarize. They are not playing around with this character in the slightest. But the true main character of this episode is Audi Mark, whose unsevering procedure is going poorly. We get a few hints while in Lumen that we can no longer trust the show to tell us what version of Mark we are following, as their memories are merging into one. Ragabi begins to push things a little far, since she is kind of a crazy lady, so Mark goes out and shockingly meets Helena Egan, possibly by chance, but I believe she followed him purposefully. The two's discussion is incredibly uncomfortable, almost hinting at Mark befriending Helena, possibly leading to Audi Mark becoming a Lumen goon. This thought has been in the back of my mind for some time now, but it's quickly cancelled out when Helena slips up and Mark begins to get suspicious, resulting in the incredibly intense conclusion to this scene, in which Mark rushes away searching for threats possibly against his life, before heading back and requesting to have the procedure sped up. I would guess that this is so that Mark can leave Lumen behind him, unlikely to actually go after the Inhumane Company like his sister Devon will do, due to his indifferent personality. The scene of Ragabi attempting to flood out Mark's chip is probably the grossest the show has gotten, full on showing the opening into the man's brain while he is still somehow conscious. Soon after this, he collapses to the ground in front of Devon, who he certainly can no longer hide his actions from. Honestly, I think the cut to credits should have been here, but it was a bit later. This scene is truly wild. Mark's fuzzy memory has made him an unreliable narrator, meaning we no longer can trust that what the show tells us is reality. This adds a whole new level of weirdness that is already present in the basic conversations between characters. Case in point, the uncomfortable scene between Helena and Mark, which Britt Lower has rightfully gotten lots of praise for. The manipulative nature of this character is directly paralleled by the tortured, sporadic decision-making of Helly so much that I sometimes find myself looking for a credit for Helena's actress as if she's a different person to the one that plays Helly. The writers and actors on this show seem completely willing to challenge themselves in ways which I personally would shy away from, now potentially attempting to combine two characters into one while returning both sets of traits, a feat so magnificent that I am a bit worried about how much rest this crew may be getting. How did it only take 3 years to crank out this season? It feels like it should have been 10. The show manages to leave me hanging on by a thread each and every time, it being especially bothersome this time around, as I truly could not wait to see the state Mark was in after his fall, but I just knew they would make me suffer through another week. Then the credits hit, and I just want to punch my TV, because it's too goddamn good. Attila is an episode that turns some potentially calming moments into truly grueling ones, and tests the audience patience by presenting them with things they weren't looking forward to, but simply cannot turn down. It personally gets an 8 out of 10 for me, being just a slight bit stronger than its predecessor and leaving us with so much that I wouldn't be surprised if the next episode is a full-blown masterpiece. The symbolism that this crew is able to achieve suggests to me that a trip through Mark's mind may be in order, though that trope might be a little overdone. Still, I believe some exploration of Innie and Audi Mark's combined psyche is soon to come, whether it be literal or more subtly conveyed. Adam Scott has some work to do, but I trust that, just like everyone else, he's up to the occasion. Bye now.